Do you think that's one of the main reasons why we've seen all these problems recently, and the risk that we're going to continue seeing these problems if we don't have more skilled people to go around?
I think they'll always, in this technology economy, the technology economy is growing so fast that there will always be a skill shortage, because the growth of demand is faster than the growth of the supply. However, the failures we're seeing in the market, some might argue, represent failures in testing. And that has nothing to do with the skills of the people, except the skills and capabilities to be able to test these complex systems. So I think I have a bit of a different perspective. So yes, I think demand will exceed supply. Technology is changing fast. It's going to be hard to have people with the proper skills. But I would separate that from the market failures and the issue, if that's the right word to use. And that goes back to testing disciplines and testing completeness. And obviously, as the systems get more complex and the interactions get more complex, it begs the question, how do you even test these things? So I think the testing technology and capabilities are lagging behind both demand and supply. And that's what they need to sort out. What represents an adequate test before you can go to market with something that can impact billions or trillions of dollars in perhaps a nanosecond or so? And I think that's the critical discipline. Then how do you actually engineer the testing? Because the expense of building shadow systems that behave as markets to be able to test this, well, someone's got to figure out the risk-reward of doing that.
Do you think that technology can ever be foolproof? Or do you think that, on the other hand, what really has to happen is that companies, financial firms, have to factor in technology risk or operational risk much more than they have been today, and that there will always be some kind of technology failure at some firm?
Lots of concepts around the issue of zero-defect software, but that comes at a cost, and that comes at a cost of testing, and some of the things I mentioned before is how do you test and drive things for zero defects. So the issue has to be really, going back to the risk-reward model, is what is good enough to manage the risk consistent with the transaction types, the impact you might have. Then how do you test to that level, and what does it take to get you to the next level? So I think engineering of quality in these systems becomes key, and I think everyone understands that. It's really examining what good enough means. You see that in simple things. You look at data centers, and people go for 5 or 6 nines availability, things that mean that you're out no more than 30 seconds a year or 3 seconds a year. But what if there's a major transaction during that 3-second or 30-second or whatever it is window? It really doesn't matter if you had 5 or 6 nines availability, if that brought down a nation or brought down a company or something like that. So it's this very delicate balance of what's the engineered level of quality, what's the risk at that level of quality, what's the cost of taking to the next level, and the risk reward. And again, if you look at software testing techniques, in some ways they really haven't evolved since the beginning of software development. So clearly the demand and options we have for technology are growing faster than even software development and or testing methods. It's quite a conundrum. So we're getting ahead of ourselves. But again, the concept of zero-defect software has been around in the literature for 50 or 60 years. It's a matter of at what cost, and that becomes key.